Welcome back to my channel, Greg Allen F1. I hope wherever this video finds you, you're keeping warm. Here in North Carolina, someone flipped a switch and we went from extremely hot summer to blistering cold autumn weather, seemingly overnight. It seems like that happens every single year, but nonetheless, we had a week off in Formula One, so a little bit of extra time to look at some other stats, and I had a really cool request in my comments to look at the epic battle in 2007 at Vodafone McLaren Mercedes between Fernando Alonso, the two-time champion, and an upstart rookie named Lewis Hamilton. So let's take a look at it. Season build-up. Fernando Alonso joins Vodafone McLaren Mercedes from Renault after several seasons with the team, and after just one season, he would go back to Renault right after this. Lewis Hamilton was selected over a few other drivers as the number 2 seat at this team behind the two-time champion of Alonso. A little bit of a surprise selection at the time, but after we see what he does in his rookie season, they look like geniuses for doing it. Season history. Several clashes between Alonso and Hamilton would wind up creating an amazing amount of tension at this team throughout the season, and it's a tension that's going to snowball throughout the season and get bigger and bigger and bigger. Hamilton ultimately winds up edging out the two-time champion for second. They tie in points with 109 points to end the season, with Kimi Räikkönen going on to win the championship for Ferrari. But because Hamilton had more second-place finishes, he gets second place in points. Some of those clashes and tensions between Alonso, Hamilton, and the team ultimately end up with Fernando Alonso and the team agreeing to terminate their contract after just one season and the two parties going their separate ways. So how do we get there? Just how close was it between Alonso and Hamilton? Well, each driver has 12 podiums. Each driver has 4 wins on the season, and each driver ends the season with 109 points. Now, some of the other background that was going on during the 2007 season, Vodafone McLaren Mercedes would get caught up in the quote-unquote espionage scandal or Spygate scandal, where they were accused of sharing information that they had on other constructors in the sport. As a result, they would ultimately be banned from competing for the Constructors' Championship by the end of the season. So a huge blow, adding to some of this background tension of what was going on with the team. As a result, Ferrari locks up the Constructor Championship with a few races to go in the season, and they also win the overall World Driver Championship that season. So a little bit of a rocky start to come into Formula One with the Vodafone McLaren Mercedes name, and a situation that Alonso and Hamilton get caught up in. And it definitely adds to their tension on the tracks. Looking through the round by round, we have 17 races in the 2007 season, and all of them were pretty fantastic for Vodafone McLaren Mercedes. And it's kind of amazing going into that final race that one of these two drivers did not win the championship. Lewis Hamilton was definitely a favorite going into it with the way he had run, but both these drivers had a great chance to take home a title there, and Kimi Räikkönen finds a way to get it done. But the focus mainly was on Alonso versus Hamilton, and that a two-time champion could be upstaged by an upstart rookie. So how did it happen? So through the first couple of Grand Prix, Alonso starts off in championship form. Qualifies second, finishes second, qualifies second, gets a win. Has a little bit rough round 3 where he qualifies 4th and finishes 5th. But again, in round 4, he finishes back on the podium with a 3rd. So 3 out of 4 races, he's on the podium with a win. Keep going down the line here between 5 and 9. Still fantastic. He gets a second win of the year in round 5. Has a little bit of rough round 6 where he finishes 7th. Starts second, finishes second. Starts 10th, finishes 7th. Another not great day there. But comparing the two-time champion, this is a really good start. But comparing what he did to what this upstart rookie named Lewis Hamilton winds up doing. Lewis Hamilton podiums in his very first race after qualifying 4th. He follows that up with a streak of 4 second-place finishes. So 3rd, 2nd, 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 and then he follows it up with back-to-back wins. And this is where the pressure is going to start mounting on Fernando Alonso, because Lewis Hamilton is showing that he is for real and that he is going to challenge every bit of Alonso, and he's no number 2 driver. And that would be seen pretty much by the end of the season. After the back-to-back wins, he follows it up with 2 more podiums, with 2 more 3rds. That is, I'm going to count it with you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight podiums to start Lewis Hamilton's career as a rookie. And you're bringing him in to be a number 2 driver behind a 2-time champion like Fernando Alonso, and he's already upstaging him right away. think about other teams out there, teams like Red Bull in today's Formula One, where we are demoting drivers like Pierre Gasly, and Alex Albon was under so much pressure to get a podium. And you look at it, if you compare them to this standards, they're probably out of Formula One compared to what Lewis Hamilton did in his rookie year at a top team. It's insane. 9 straight podiums. It finally gets broken when he qualifies 10th and finishes 9th. But how does he follow that up? The young hotshot rookie, he follows it up by winning the very next week after that. After a week of 9 straight podiums, or streak of 9 straight podiums gets broken up. But let's talk about round number 11, the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2007. Probably the most memorable incident, maybe the entire Formula One season that year, maybe behind the espionage scandal. But we have to talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix, and not Sunday, but Saturday, the qualifying between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. Through Q1, Q2, and Q3, every time that Fernando Alonso went out on the racetrack, he was putting up the best time and was being followed by his teammate, Lewis Hamilton, who was beating him every single time they went out there. So right towards the end of qualifying, the 2 drivers came in for their final set of tires to go out and make one final flying lap. And Fernando Alonso was pitting. Lewis Hamilton was coming in behind him, and Alonso holds, after he gives the signal to leave pit lane to do his flying lap, he holds in that pit stall for an extra 10 to 11 seconds, not allowing Hamilton to reach the line in time to do one more flying lap. That incident is probably the most memorable incident. It created a tremendous amount of tension between the 2 drivers. It was seen as poor sportsmanship by Fernando Alonso. The team somewhat defended that Lewis Hamilton blew an assignment earlier in qualifying, which should have had him pitting first to begin with. But regardless of what happened, that was a highlighted incident that the media just absolutely hung on to and would not let go. The result is the FIA and the stewards look into it. Despite qualifying with a pole-setting time, he winds up getting demoted to 6th place in that race, and Lewis Hamilton goes on to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. So a major incident there, and these 2 drivers never had a trust between each other after that. Several other incidents, minor by comparison, happened between these 2 drivers. But I believe that that incident at the Hungarian Grand Prix is probably the main thing that wound up making the decision that Fernando Alonso and this team would go their separate ways at the end of the season. But as we go through the rest of the season, Fernando Alonso follows it up by qualifying on pole and winning the next Grand Prix. 4th, 3rd, he gets his 4th win of the year in round 14. And then the end of the year isn't fantastic for him. He has his first retirement after that. A couple more podiums, so it's not terrible. It's just compared to what Lewis Hamilton's doing over here, it's not enough to get him a win. And the final Grand Prix of the year, he qualifies 4th, gets a podium in 3rd, but unfortunately that's not going to be enough to get him a title. Lewis Hamilton ends his year with a win, 5th, 2nd, 4th, another win. He has his first retirement of the year right at the end of the season, and then he finishes 7th to close out the year. So when we look at their averages, Alonso finishes the year averaging qualification P2.9, and he finishes with an average of 4th throughout the whole season in his Grand Prix. By comparison, Lewis Hamilton has an average qualifying of P2.6, so slightly better than Fernando Alonso, and an average finishing position of P3.9, just ever so slightly better than Fernando Alonso. But these numbers, when I've done other comparisons on this channel, there's been at least a 2 to 3 grid difference between the 2 drivers in comparing. I mean, we're talking about a few decimal points here at this point. These 2 drivers were so incredibly close this entire season, which definitely added and amplified that tension between the 2 drivers at this team. There was no clear number 2. Why it was a big deal, of course, is that Fernando Alonso came into this expecting to be a clear number 1 driver with a young rookie trying to learn the reins, and instead what you got was Lewis Hamilton, who was battling for a title right out of the gate and rattling off 9 straight podiums to start his career. So a really interesting and epic battle between Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton. If you watched Formula One in the 2007 season, who did you side with? Which driver did you think ran a little bit better? Definitely let me know in the comments. At the end of the season, Fernando Alonso decides that this is not a good position for him. He leaves and heads back to Renault with some contingencies. He could not go to a team that Vodafone, McLaren, Mercedes believed was a championship competitor that season. So there was almost a non-compete clause in the separation of that contract. And I believe that This decision began a bunch of decisions that have kind of hampered Alonso's career a little bit, and he's wound up in situations where he has not been able to really compete for a championship really since then. So, and meanwhile, obviously, Lewis Hamilton becomes the face of Mercedes, and we know what he's doing to this day, you know, well over a decade, 13 years later after this. Let me know what you think of the 2007 season. I'd love to know what you have to say in the comments about it. And was this one of the most epic battles at a team that we've seen in recent history? When you see some of the other teams out there, like Albon versus Verstappen right now, you know, Leclerc versus Vettel, Bottas versus Hamilton, I don't think that right now we have any other team that is really battling out like these two did. I think it'd be great for the sport if we could get two drivers at a top team battling out like we did back then, or even Nico Rosberg versus Lewis Hamilton in 2016. But there you have it. Fernando Alonso versus Lewis Hamilton, 2007. A pretty epic battle for a two-time champion being outstaged or upstaged by an upstart, Lewis Hamilton. As always, if you come across my channel, please give me a like and a subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.